Ambition, royal intrigue and imprisonment in the Tower of London.
One of the most infamous crimes in British history, and it's remained unsolved for more than 500 years.
We're talking about the murder of two young princes, Edward and Richard, in the Tower of London.
In the warm summer of 1674, workers clearing rubble at the Tower of London uncovered a small wooden chest hidden beneath a staircase. Inside were the fragile remains of two children.
The builders discovered underneath a staircase 2 skeletons, and they were clearly skeletons of children. And the king was in no doubt. He had found the missing princes.
Their bones resting together in silence that had lasted for almost 200 years. The remains were quietly taken to Westminster Abbey and sealed away with an inscription naming them as the lost princes, Edward V and his younger brother Richard of Shrewbury.
They disappear in the tower soon after. Some people believe that they were murdered.
For generations, their story has haunted history, surrounded by whispers, power struggles, and the shadow of the bloody tower. Did their uncle, Richard III, order their deaths?
And if we were to put that to an ordinary jury, was Richard guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of killing his nephews in the Tower of London?
Or was another hand responsible for silencing them to claim the throne?
So more claims that Richard III ordered the murder of his nephews.
Now, with modern science unlocking secrets long buried, DNA analysis has begun to speak for the dead. And what it reveals could change everything we thought we knew. The background of the royal disappearance. The story begins in England during the late 15th century, a time when crowns were won not by peace, but by power. King Edward IV, a strong and charismatic ruler, had finally restored stability after years of bloody conflict between the rival houses of York and Lancaster. But when he died unexpectedly in April of 1483, that fragile peace began to crumble. Edward left behind 2 sons. The eldest, Edward, was just 12 years old, intelligent and confident, already being prepared to rule as King Edward V. His younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, was only 9 years old, lively and affectionate, a devoted companion to his brother. Their mother, Queen Elizabeth Woodville, came from a powerful and controversial family, a fact that would soon plunge her children into danger. Before his death, King Edward had named his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, as Lord Protector, trusting him to guide the young king until he came of age. At first, this seemed reasonable. Richard was respected, loyal, and known for his administrative skill. But in the struggle for influence around the boy king, alliances shifted swiftly. The young Edward V was brought from Ludlow to London for his coronation. He was placed in the Tower of London, as tradition dictated, to await the ceremony. Shortly afterward, his younger brother Richard joined him there, brought from sanctuary at Westminster Abbey where their mother had taken refuge. At that time, the Tower was not only a fortress and prison, but also a royal residence. Yet, as days turned into weeks, whispers began to stir. The coronation was postponed, then quietly cancelled. Courtiers who once spoke confidently of the new king now fell silent. In June, a shocking announcement shattered the court. A claim surfaced that King Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid, making both her sons illegitimate. Parliament accepted the argument, and in July, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was crowned King Richard III. The 2 young princes remained in the Tower. For a while, they were seen playing in the gardens, laughing together under the watch of their guards. Then, slowly, they disappeared from view. By the end of the summer, no one had seen them at all. No official record explains what happened next. The boys were never seen alive again. Their disappearance became one of the most enduring mysteries in British history, a haunting silence at the heart of the royal bloodline, theories and suspects. As the months passed in the year 1483, the young princes were seen less and less inside the Tower of London. At first, people thought they were being kept safe before the coronation, but soon they were gone completely. No one saw them again. Their disappearance shocked the whole kingdom, and from that day, everyone wanted to know who was responsible. Many people believed that their uncle, King Richard III, was behind it. He had the strongest reason. As long as his nephews were alive, many in England would see them as the rightful kings. Some said Richard gave the order for their deaths, so that no one could challenge his crown. Years later, a man named James Tyrrell was said to have confessed that he carried out the murders on the king's command. He claimed that 2 of his servants smothered the boys while they slept and buried them under a staircase in the tower. But that confession was written long after the events, and there was no solid proof. For centuries, historians questioned whether Tyrrell's confession was real, until a new discovery brought his name back into the spotlight. In 2024, a document was found that could change everything. It was the 500-year-old will of a woman named Margaret Capel, who died in 1522. Hidden deep in her will was a line leaving her son a precious item, a gold chain that once belonged to King Edward V, the elder prince. This royal chain should never have been in private hands. It was a symbol of the king's office, something meant only for a crowned ruler. But the most shocking part was who owned it. Margaret Capel was the sister-in-law of James Tyrrell, the very man accused of killing the princes. Somehow, Edward V's chain had found its way into the family of the prime suspect. For the first time, there was a real physical link, an actual object connected to one of the missing princes and to the man said to have carried out their murder. No clothing, no jewelry, no remains had ever been found before. But this single item, mentioned in an old will, might be the first trace of what really happened after the boys vanished. Others thought it was someone else. The Duke of Buckingham, once a trusted ally of Richard, had also wanted power. He had helped Richard become king, but later turned against him. Some believed that Buckingham killed the princes on his own, hoping to gain favor or even take the throne himself. He had the chance and the ambition, but no one ever proved it. A few even blamed Henry Tudor, who would later become King Henry VII. At the time, he was living in exile, waiting for a chance to take the crown. If the princes were gone, his path to power would be clear. His mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort, was known for her political skill, and some thought she might have been involved. But Henry was far away from London, so that idea remains more guesswork than fact. There is also a gentler thought, that maybe the princes were never murdered at all. Some people believe they could have died from illness while in the tower. It was a place known for its poor air and sickness. If they died naturally, their deaths might have been kept secret to avoid blame or panic. Still, such silence could only have lasted if someone powerful wanted it that way. And then, there are those who like to believe the boys escaped. Over the years, stories spread that one of them survived. Decades later, a man named Perkin Warbeck claimed to be Richard, the younger prince. He said he had escaped from the tower and lived in hiding for years. Many wanted to believe him, but the truth was never proven, and he was later executed. Hundreds of years later, in 1674, workers in the tower found 2 small skeletons buried under a staircase. People believed they were the princes and placed them in Westminster Abbey. But without DNA testing, no one could be sure. The discovery answered nothing. It only deepened the mystery. What really happened inside the tower remains unknown. Were the boys murdered? Did they die naturally? Or did one of them live on under another name? The truth has been lost to time, but even now, new clues continue to surface, keeping the mystery alive for another generation. The discovery of the bones. In the warm summer of 1674, the Tower of London was being repaired. Workmen were clearing old stone and rubble near one of the staircases in the White Tower when their tools struck something unexpected. Hidden deep beneath the stairs, they uncovered a wooden chest. When they opened it, the sight inside stopped them cold. Inside the box were the fragile bones of 2 small children. The skeletons were tiny, their bones worn and pale from resting for centuries in the damp earth. The discovery sent shock and excitement through everyone who heard the news. For generations, people had whispered that the missing princes were buried somewhere within the tower. Now, it seemed that the mystery might finally be solved. When King Charles II heard of the discovery, he ordered that the bones be treated with honor. He had them placed in Westminster Abbey, the great resting place of English kings and queens. 4 years later, in 1678, the remains were sealed inside a white marble urn designed by the famous architect Sir Christopher Wren. The urn carried a Latin message saying the bones belonged to Edward V and his brother Richard, Duke of York. It was meant to bring closure, a way to end centuries of questions and rumors. But it was not proof. In the 17th century, there was no way to test who the bones truly belonged to. The decision rested only on belief, not on science. And so the urn was sealed, and the mystery remained buried with it. The bones lay undisturbed for more than 250 years. Visitors to the abbey would stand before the urn, quietly imagining the tragic story of the two lost princes. It became both a memorial and a warning, a reminder of how power can destroy innocence. Many accepted that the mystery was solved, yet others wondered if those bones really were the princes, or perhaps other children lost in a violent age. Then in 1933, King George V allowed a group of experts to study the remains. The urn was carefully opened, and the bones were examined by Lawrence Tanner, keeper of the Abbey's records, and Professor William Wright, a skilled anatomist. Their study showed that the skeletons belonged to two children about the right ages, one around 12, the other about 9 or 10. Small pieces of cloth, thought to be fine velvet, were found with them, suggesting they were of noble birth. Still, the science of that time was limited. The experts could not be completely sure whether the bones belonged to boys or girls. They had no way to use carbon dating to learn when the children had died. DNA testing did not exist. The team could only say that the bones might be the princes, but they could not prove it. Some later pointed out that the bones were mixed with others and were not complete, which made it hard to draw firm conclusions. After the examination, the remains were placed back into the urn in Westminster Abbey, where they rest to this day. Over the following decades, many historians and scientists called for another look. They hoped to reopen the urn and use modern technology to find the truth, especially DNA testing, the same science that has already solved other royal mysteries. In 2012, archaeologists made a shocking discovery beneath a simple parking lot in the city of Leicester. They found a skeleton that matched the time and wounds of King Richard III, the very man long accused of killing the princes. Using DNA from living descendants of his family line, scientists confirmed in 2013 that the bones were truly his. That discovery proved what science could achieve. It brought a lost king back into history after more than 5 centuries. For many, it reignited hope that the same power of science could finally bring answers about the princes too. If science could bring back a king, could it also bring back the truth about 2 missing princes? The role of DNA analysis. The discovery of King Richard III's remains proved that science can uncover truths hidden for centuries. It showed that even the deepest mysteries can be solved when evidence meets technology. Now, many wonder if the same could happen for the princes in the tower. DNA testing has changed how we explore the past. By studying genetic material left in ancient bones, scientists can identify people long gone by comparing their DNA to that of living relatives. If experts were ever given permission to study the remains sealed inside Westminster Abbey, this method could finally reveal who those children truly were. The process would begin with mitochondrial DNA, the kind passed down from mothers to their children. Scientists could compare it to known descendants of Queen Elizabeth Woodville, the prince's mother, to see if the bones belonged to her family. The test would need only a few tiny fragments and would be done with great care. Another method, radiocarbon dating, could show when the children died, helping to confirm whether their deaths really took place in the late 15th century. Combined, these tests could turn speculation into fact and give the world an answer it has waited for across 5 long centuries. But for now, the chance remains out of reach. The Church of England has refused permission for testing, believing the remains should rest undisturbed. They warned that opening one royal tomb could lead to others being questioned. Yet, for historians and scientists, this is not only about curiosity, it is about truth. It is about giving two lost children their real names back. For centuries, their story has been told through rumor and imagination. DNA testing could finally replace those stories with proof. Imagine what it would mean to know for certain. If the bones are truly the princes, it would confirm that the Tower of London was their final prison. But if they are not, then the mystery deepens, and somewhere, perhaps still hidden beneath the streets of London, the real resting place of Edward and Richard might yet be found. Until permission is granted, the answer remains locked away, sealed in marble and silence. But one day, science and history may come together to end this haunting mystery once and for all. The findings and their meaning. If the day ever comes when the urn in Westminster Abbey is opened and the bones are finally tested, the results could change how we understand one of England's oldest mysteries. Whatever the outcome, the truth would echo across history. If the DNA proved that the bones really are those of Edward and Richard, the lost princes, it would confirm that the Tower of London was not just their prison, it was their grave. It would mean that after more than 500 years of debate, the story of their disappearance had ended in tragedy. The discovery would also force people to look again at King Richard III. For centuries, he has been painted as a villain, the uncle who murdered his nephews to steal the throne. But history is rarely so simple. New evidence might show whether he was truly guilty, or if he became the victim of later rumors spread by those who came after him. If, on the other hand, the DNA revealed that the bones were not the princes at all, the mystery would deepen. It would mean that the real resting place of Edward and Richard remains hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. Perhaps the boys escaped. Perhaps their deaths took place far from the tower. Such a discovery could rewrite much of what we thought we knew about the fall of the House of York. Beyond the question of guilt or innocence, the testing would bring something greater: recognition. The princes have been named in a story, symbols of lost innocence and royal betrayal. DNA could finally give them back their humanity. It would turn legend into life and show that behind the crown and the politics were two real children whose lives ended far too soon. The results would also remind the world of how powerful science has become. It can reach across centuries to touch the past, to confirm or deny what history has only guessed. In a way, DNA is not just about solving a mystery. It is about giving history a voice that cannot be silenced by rumor or time. Until that testing is allowed, the story of the princes remains a question with no answer. The urn in Westminster Abbey still holds its secret, and the Tower of London still carries its shadow. But hope remains that one day, the truth will rise from the silence, not to accuse, but to finally bring peace to two young lives lost so long ago. And so the tower still keeps its secret. Beneath its stones and silence lies a story of power, loss, and unanswered questions. The world may one day uncover the truth through science, but until then, the mystery of the princes in the tower remains, waiting for its final chapter to be written. So tell us, what do you think really happened to the two young princes? Were they victims of betrayal, or did one of them manage to escape? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments.